Anybody who comes to me with an advice, I would say, boss, AI to karna hi padega. The right amount of exposure from your superiors, the kind of work that you end up putting behind it, the rewards and recognition that you get at the end of it. Three things matters the most when somebody decides to either stick around or move around, right? You also don't want it to be too frequent, too many changes. Otherwise, वो recruiter फिर आएगा, अरे क्या कर रहे हो इतना जल्दी जंप कर रहे हो, नहीं लेना है हमको.
Hey there, welcome to Marketing Mavericks with IndieFolio. Today we have Chirag with us, who's the Assistant General Manager of Marketing at BookMyShow. Chirag has spent almost a decade at BookMyShow in various marketing roles, and I'm excited to unpack his journey today. Talk a lot about performance marketing, OTT's impact on entertainment, the future of cinemas, and also the importance of learning. Hey Chirag, thanks for your time and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
The first question we ask everybody, Chirag, is how did you really get into marketing? Is there a certain moment or a certain, scenario which you experienced which made you decide marketing's your calling, or did you just take it by the ear?
So for me, I mean, I've been fascinated about media overall. Since I was a kid, I had my uncle who used to work for production house earlier. I had my dad's uncle who used to work for another production house. There's a lot of conversations that we would hear and talk about. There were those awards which were kept at our home. Not exactly awards, but you could say memorabilia. Because back in the day when a movie used to hit like 25 weeks, 50 weeks, the silver, gold, and platinum jubilees that we used to see earlier, those memorabilia used to be placed inside the house. So you see them day in, day out. You feel excited. I think somewhere around my ninth or tenth is when I finally thought that marketing is where I want to be in, and not exactly. So science was never a calling for me. As you know, you largely have three streams here: science, arts, and commerce. So commerce, because I come from a family of businessmen, and then within that, marketing is what was really my calling. So I used to feel excited. I used to like seeing ads on TV. I always wanted to understand what goes behind that. You keep on reading a lot back then, physical newspapers, and then on a weekly basis, you hear that what was the thought behind a particular campaign? How did they go about it? How the shoot happened? You hear so many different, you could say, greats giving their experience on what goes behind a campaign, and that's something that excited me. And I think eventually, while it took me some time to reach where I am, but I eventually came here, and I hope the journey from here on is much more better.
Fantastic. I think what an amazing family background. I think you were almost meant
Yeah,
to be where you are. Knowing that what you like is
yeah,
pretty rare today, I feel. A lot
yeah,
of times, what happens is there's so much signaling happening by the society to a young person today, right? That this is the right path, do this, do that. And a lot of times I see people doing just following those signals and realizing I'm 25 and I actually don't know what I want to do.
yeah,
So
yeah.
have you thought about this, where what do you think is a good advice to people who still don't know what they're passionate about? How would you tell them what they should do?
So I would, I mean, just to, I mean, add to the point on the signaling piece. I think folks from my generation were, equally pressured by the signals from time to time, right? So when I was a kid, all my relatives wanted me to be a doctor. That is the next best profession out there back then. Uh, as you grow up, engineering was thrown here and there. Then somebody would say journalism, somebody would say something. Reference materials available. I remember after completing my 10th exams, I had gone to this counseling workshop in Fort, where they actually it's a day-long workshop. You do multiple exams. I mean, multiple things. They test your aptitude, they test your thinking capabilities and stuff like that. And at the end of it, they give you a result and they tell you that these are the kind of professions that are apt for you, and certain professions where you would think that I would want to do is not there. So for me, those things have happened. It's just that the scale of those things was very limited, considering just the way I'm not exposed to too many things around me back then. Uh, the folks giving me those signals are also not too exposed. So they're only talking basis what their experiences. So today, if I'm reading a lot about, let's say, AI and in an ML and stuff like that, anybody who comes to me with an advice, I would say, boss, AI to karna hi padega. तुमको. You have to learn GPT, you have to learn this, you have to learn that. Make yourself future proof, learn digital marketing, stuff like that, right? You Because those are things that you are talking day in day out. Those are things that you're getting exposed day in day out, and you want anybody who's coming to you with an advice, for an advice, sorry, rather, you would want to ensure that their back is covered for any future endeavors that they're going on that way.
Got it. Got it. Another opinion I'd love to ask is, I don't know if you've come across these reels, but a lot of times I come across a lot of people endorsing this behavior that if you want to grow, uh, switch companies every year.
Right,
That's the
right.
way you'd get more salary year on year. That's the way you get promoted year on year. And when you look at some of the top operators today,
Yeah,
in top companies, that's not the case. They've been there. They've actually
yeah,
built something, learned, what worked, what did not, double down and actually make a change. And you've spent, I believe, almost a decade
yeah.
at BookMyShow. So, for a lot of people who might be thinking, hey, that route is the right way. Why did you stick along so long, and what are the advantages of sticking with a company?
So, I think if somebody sees my LinkedIn or my resume at any point in time, they'll see a lot of those smaller gaps in the earlier years.
Right.
I've been with the company was when I with my first job, which is almost quarter to 2 years. Everything after that is 1.5, one, less than one, before joining Book My Show. And uh, and there are multiple reasons to it, right? So sometimes you don't like the company, sometimes you don't like the work, sometimes you don't like the city that you're based in. Life doesn't feel exciting enough. When I joined my show, it was a very chance encounter. So I was at one of the IPL games in Ahmedabad where I was working with Wadilal, and I just felt, I was see if I can go for a game on my own separately, right? And that day when I was checking out BookMyShow, and I was using BookMyShow on and off for movie tickets, but never thought of buying IPL tickets online. So I was checking, and there was this big flash at the top in the website that you're seeing right now is obviously very a futuristic one than what we had earlier. It had a big flash of we are hiring. I clicked on it. I saw marketing position there, and I applied without even thinking कि कोई call करेगा. Right? I was sitting in Ahmedabad. Uh, Things turned out great. I got the call. Had a couple of rounds. I was here. I was hired to do trade marketing for them because that is what my forte was back then. Three things matters the most when somebody decides to either stick around or move around, right? If you are not motivated with the kind of work that you're doing, irrespective of how great the vision of the founder is, right? Or how great the team is around you. But if you personally are not motivated to put in the efforts on day in, day out basis to get the results, then I don't think so. Surviving this long at one company would ever happen to anybody. Nobody survives 9 years without enjoying the work,
Right.
or the company, or the colleagues that you have and colleague conference that you have here. So I think those things matters the most. And eventually, if everything is growing, your salaries, your compensation, your anything, with time. While I would say earlier years in your career, yes, it makes sense to jump around, get the bigger PA package maybe. But that would you would want to do not just for the money, but also for the additional experience or the additional things you're going to get. It's okay to try out few things initially in your career. Like I started as a public relations associate, and now I'm doing something else altogether, right? And then I would want to stay with from PR as much as I can. Uh, Advertising, you have media, you have whatever XYZ things, right? Social media to launch bhi nahi hua tha tabhi, so we're not even discussing that. And he said, you know what, Chirag, why don't you try with one thing? You start with one thing, and then in few days, few months, you'll realize either this thing is for you or it's not for you. and you can easily switch to something else that is and what your calling is. But if you like this, great, then you're sorted. And I think at the end of that quarter 2 years, I realized this is not for me. Uh, the 6, 8, 9 months prior to me quitting were nightmare for me personally. So early in this career, going through all of that, you wouldn't want somebody as young as where I was to be there. But that's a learning that has stuck with me in some way. It has helped me for my future endeavors in some form. So not all of that has gone to waste. But yeah, I think this uh, advice from this mentor has stuck with me that you try. If it doesn't work out, if you feel that it's not for you, it's okay to move on. You don't have to drag it, and then and get bored and get unhappy around it. So it's okay. So I would say while look at the money for sure, that's very basic for your survivals and whatever needs that you would have, but also see whether the role that you are going for is something that makes you happy. Because if one is not working, the other is not working, you also don't want it to be too frequent, too many changes. Otherwise, वो recruiter फिर आएगा, अरे क्या कर रहे हो इतना जल्दी जंप कर रहे हो नहीं लेना है इनको अभी. You don't want to be in that zone. But yeah, if your proof of work is great, I think even those frequent jumps maybe make sense.
Got it. Got it. I think brilliant advice. I couldn't agree more. The more you get your hands dirty, the more you try in the start, the better the chances for you to really understand what you like and why. And I think
Yeah,
finding a great company which is growing with good colleagues where you not just get paid well but learn and can actually expose yourself to multiple things is definitely a brilliant culture to find yourself in. And I think people should, also hold a high bar for the company. I often see, especially young folks, they just work with one or two companies and they think that's how work happens. And I
yeah,
always tell them that, every company is very different. Even if they are same business, same products, you may have a very different experience when you're
yeah,
actually
yeah,
inside that company. So well put, well put. I want to jump now into media, book my show, and what you've been doing in Bombay, in Inox, Eros, whatever you want to call
yeah,
it, and that's pretty much gone in my mind. I think it's rarely I see somebody like buy physical tickets.
yeah, yeah,
I wanted to get your perspective. Like, is that the case pan India? I know multiplexes are, a big revenue generator for the business, and they happen to be only in metro cities, which are digitized. But you know
yeah.
how e-commerce worldwide, I think it's single digit penetration. What's the case with online sales, and is expanding into single screens and tier threes a big priority for Book My Show?
So, few things here. I think multiplexes have expanded quite well in India by now. They are very much there in your tier three cities, tier four cities, smaller towns, and they're expanding by the day. As far as the information that we have is roughly of the total sales in India, ticket sale, around 35 to 45% of the sales happens online, uh, either via an aggregator or via the cinemas or websites. Uh, but yeah, still a large chunk of people do end up going offline. Now, obviously, this will vary. So cities like Bombay would have probably, let's say, 80% online and remaining offline. And a city like Lucknow would be probably at 45, 50% online and 50%
Hmm.
offline. So this will vary a lot, city to city. And a large reason to that is, I think, from a consumer perspective, the biggest thing that matters to them is one, the time, and two, the seats. So in Bombay, where you have to, for even to travel, let's say a 3 or 4 kilometer stretch, you might take 15, 20 minutes. That same 20 minutes serves, gets you 10, 15 kilometers in a tier two town,
Hmm.
right? So you don't mind spending that 20 minutes traveling and getting your tickets and getting away with whatever fees that are being charged online. So I think that's how the user looks at it. And this varies a lot. So on weekends, you would see this behavior less
Mm.
because now the LG OLED TV there. But if I go to Amazon or Flipkart, I'll see it there. I will get it, in the kind of payment mode that I would want to pay with and get it delivered in maybe 2, 3 days time frame as well, right? With all the cashbacks and discounts put together. Maybe the pricing would never be matched at a local retailer, irrespective whether they are part of a organized giant or if it is a standalone retailer out there. So from that perspective, I would say when given the option to these users, they would go for it. Uh, as long as either you're saving them the time or you're assuring them the seats are there for them. If those two things are taken care of, the user will come online and buy.
Fantastic. I think very interesting to know that traffic's almost the lever for you to get more
Yeah,
adoption
yeah, yeah,
from metro cities. But I want to deep dive a little bit here. Everybody's chasing the next billion users, and
yeah,
it's been very evident that it's hard to do that. And I wanted to know. I mean, at one end, we've got some amazing UPI penetration, so it's not like people are not wanting to adopt new technology. Tacts you've seen which work to get those offline folks to a digital ecosystem.
So for us, I think the last few years, one thing that has changed internally as a company, we've been focusing more on retention of our users rather than acquisition.
Mm,
Uh, uh, because acquisition for us has been more or less organic in nature. As long as there's a big ticket money movie coming in, people do come explore us.
mm,
So, and we've in a way kind of covered the ground in such a way that any other paid mechanism online, right? What we've also done is, I think by now we would have covered almost 3 to 4 thousand cinemas. These are largely, standalone multiplexes and single screens where our branding is there.
mm.
So it's like a kirana shop, uh, but imagine a much bigger kirana shop. So you have branding of BookMyShow there talking about why somebody should explore us. So, if and not necessarily that they would do that in that first visit, but maybe the second, the third, the fourth. Uh, we have seen people have come online, explored whenever there's a big movie coming in. So that does work for us, and that is at minimal spends. So rather than giving out first-time user offers or at scale, we would rather want to utilize that, tactically wherever in cities where we feel that there is more scope for us,
Mm.
uh, as compared to, let's say, targeting a metro city for that matter, right? So, uh, and hence retention for us is where the meat is. Those are areas where you've acquired them over the past so many years. Those are the areas where if somebody does even that one additional transaction, then their previous behavior brings in a direct revenue. So the focus is to ensure the retention numbers are high. Our churn rate is to get it to the bare minimum that we can. It's difficult, but that's what as an organization we are working on.
Very interesting. I mean, it's a little bit surprising to me because I don't I don't even know any other player, who I even see people use.
Yeah,
So is retention a priority because perhaps you'd rely on the titles, right? Like there's a Kalki which has come, so obviously
yeah,
I
yeah.
used to book my show to buy it. But there may be like an Anatomy of a Fall which nobody probably knows about. Maybe actually that has some Oscar buzz, but there are a lot of movies, in theaters.
Sure.
And um, are those, dull times the ones where you're trying to kind of have more engagement and attention?
No, so I think for us, ENR, happens throughout, irrespective of the movie. The good part is that we've been here for 14, 15 years now, and collectively almost 25 years in the industry. So the data is there with us. So we know what sort of movies will work well for what audiences. Even if it's an Anatomy of a Fall or an Oppenheimer, uh, I mean, while the name is big, comparatively it's a much smaller scale movie in
Hmm.
India in terms of screens, right? Uh, and when it is competing with another large Hindi blockbuster movie, and the kind of numbers it can get, it's phenomenal. So smaller movies, but targeted communication. So if Kavan is somebody whom I know that likes watching Oscar-nominated movies, I know I can reach out and tell him, that this movie has been, nominated for Oscars or has won Oscars. Come and watch it, right? At a venue near you. The other thing is also that the movie doesn't get so many screens as well. So I'm not talking mass here. If an anatomy of fall is it's not releasing more than maybe 100, 150, max 200 screens in India. And you're talking to people who have a very high disposable income with them. So I'm talking to folks in South Delhi, South Bombay, cities like Bangalore, Hyderabad, where we know these people have one the time and the monies to come and explore the smaller movies on a bigger screen. Uh, Something that has kind of dipped post COVID, I would say. But it's still a genre or an area where you'll find buyers. It might not be at the same scale as pre-COVID, but you still have buyers for such movies, and I think that is how the industry thrives and survives.
Got it. Got it. I also must ask you, I mean, as somebody who likes media so much and who's working in a prominent one, what's your outlook towards OTTs? What do you think they'll do to, let's say, long form content, right? Some people are saying it's the end of theaters, and
Yeah.
some people are saying no, it's going to become more experiential. So, what do you think like the next 5 7 years is going to be like for entertainment?
See, from our perspective and personally as well, while OTTs did bring a change in behavior in audiences in with respect to stepping out, and COVID helped them a lot, no doubt about it. However, what we've also heard and seen of late in last few months is that there is some rationalization coming in with respect to what kind of movies at what price and how they are taking it. So now it is becoming equally more and more important for producers and distributors to release their movies theatrically to get anything from the OTTs. Earlier, well, a large part of deals were done at maybe at a scripting stage or uh, pre-production. Now, from what I understand, it's you show the effort towards marketing, you show the effort towards your sales in terms of theatricals, and then we'll see what sort of pricing can we give you, right? So I think in the first 2 years of COVID, there was mad money which was being pushed out. Producers were happy because their money was getting recovered, irrespective of how good or bad their product was.
Right.
So I think all of that will change. So while OTT will continue being a key lever in the entertainment space, especially in the series format, right? Because that's one area where the likes of, I mean, back in the days where you would have a Z English or a EXN, I think all of that is shut, right?
Yeah.
So those areas, and even the short form content, 10, 8, 10 episode series that we see, like a Mirzapur, they will continue to, be there. Movies, pure OTT release movies will be very limited. Especially a movie which is made at scale, because one, you would want a larger audience to see this. Even with whatever numbers we talk about, right? Even Hotstar having the highest number of users out there, it is still nowhere closer to the kind of penetration a theater can bring in, or for that matter, a television can bring in, right? So it will take some time for them to get there. I think it will only complement the theatrical business rather than uh, compete head on, which used to do it a couple of years back. Uh, I think we'll see a very different media landscape in the next 5 years for sure.
Super interesting. I think movies to be bigger and cooler and louder is going to keep on increasing.
The bar for content has to be up there for
Hmm.
them to compete with OTTs. I think that is where the ball was dropped. It keeps on dropping there. Uh, as long as you have good content, people are going to come, irrespective of how big or small the movies. And you have innumerable amount of examples out there. You take an Adi Purush, something which is made at a very heavy scale, 500, 600 crore budget,
Right.
uh, and it doesn't live up to its promise. You have a movie like Gunpad made at 100, 150 crores budget, uh, doesn't survive the opening weekend. Uh,
Mhm.
versus you have Lapata Ladies, less than what, 5, 6, 8 crores of production cost, uh, and does fantastic theatrical revenue, does fantastic numbers for Netflix as well. And everybody's talking about it, right? Everybody is listening to the songs. The songs are hit. Arijit gets another song for people to remember him by. So content will always be the key. As long as you keep on having good content, people are going to come, irrespective of the at the platform where you're releasing it. So if it's a good content release on OTTs, people are going to check it out. If it's a good content coming in theatrically, while it might start slow, eventually the word of mouth does its job, right? And the numbers do come in. You take, I think last year there was a movie called Satya Prem Ki Katha. Uh, if you look at day one numbers of that, it was comparatively much smaller than what you would expect with two comparatively bigger names out there in the industry. The word of mouth came out, the songs were good, the story is good, the humor is just right. And I remember being in one of the shows on a Sunday evening in a in one area of Navi Mumbai at the end of it, and the show was 70% full, right? So it only re-emphasized that you get good content, people are coming to watch it. It's not like the OTT is blocking you from bringing good content. It's the producers, it's the makers themselves who are blocking themselves in getting more revenue from this theatrical business.
Absolutely. This actually, is a good segue for me to um, ask you a little bit about the entertainment space, building in the entertainment space. If you look at SaaS and fintech,
Yeah,
every day there are 100 startups which get launched in the country.
true.
And a good thing for the user, obviously, is that I have choice. But other than that,
Yeah,
it also pushes every player in that company to be on their toes.
yeah.
But I've never, maybe I don't know why, but I've at least not noticed an entertainment, technology company becoming big, right? Like, I think you folks have been there as one of the first internet companies of the country, and you're still extremely relevant. And I was keen to know, like, if somebody's, let's say, very curious of the entertainment space, movies, is building in that good advice? If somebody comes and tells somebody, hey, launch a food delivery startup or a transportation startup, they laugh them off, saying, do not do that. We have Ola, Uber, and Swiggy, Zomato. Is that the same thing in entertainment and ticketing?
I would say partially yes, but I wouldn't. I mean, officially, I wouldn't brush anybody off, right? It's India is a very competitive market. If you can find your niche, nothing like it, you can always grow from there. We did that when we started. We started small, eventually we built up. Last few years have been great with and without competition as well, right? So we had a very strong competition again without naming them. We fought tooth and nail with them, came out in a much better position than what we were in. And I think that gave us the confidence that we can take on anybody, right? So uh, I wouldn't say that you can do this, you can enter this, you can't enter this. Not my space to comment on. If there's competition, great for users, great for ecosystem as well. It keeps us, on our foots as well. It also ensures that we give our, the A game every single day and not slack off. So that's how I would see it. So if this space, if there are audiences for this competition, great. I mean, it's an open field, so there are no restrictions as such.
I know you folks have also, capitalized on that. I've booked a bunch of shows and things like that through
Yeah.
Book My Show. What is the event market like? Like, do you feel it's specifically metro cities and maybe focused on music? If you could just unpack what you see as maybe trends or patterns in live events.
Sure. So my understanding of live events is comparatively very limited. I focus more on movies, but this is whatever I understand. I'll answer basis that. Uh, See, for a market like India, the biggest issue is infra when it comes to live entertainment, right? You do not have enough infrastructure beyond a limited few cities. Uh, uh, for example, if you want to do a music festival like what you did for Lola, you don't have many open spaces, even in Bombay. Your
Right.
venues are limited. You go to a Delhi or Bangalore, uh, either you are stuck traveling in a round city, or you don't have enough open spaces, or if the spaces are there way outside the city limits, right? So folks traveling from one end of the city to the other end is also a pain. 5 seater or rather 5,000 capacity Audi and make it like a 8,000 overnight or in 2 days. Uh, I think that is where India as a market is struggling. We're trying our level best to fill up this gap in whatever we can. Uh, so hopefully with time you will see some updates from us. But as of now, everything is work behind closed doors is what I understand. So this is not
Got it.
coming officially from me.
Exciting, but you're right. I think one problem, and this is also sounds a capital intensive one, but one definite problem is
100%.
space
It is.
and venue. Yeah.
And it's something more for the government to do than the
Mhm.
individual private players, right?
Right.
Uh, um, I think a lot of this heavy lifting has to come from the government.
Mhm. Absolutely, absolutely. You mentioned that events is not a big focus, let's say for you specifically. How does the marketing mix work in a company like BookMyShow, right? Because you've got events, you've got your entire business of ticketing, then you've got a tech platform. There's a lot of
Yeah,
in-app promotions also which happen, gamification which you do. So
yeah.
how is all of this structured, for any marketer probably who's structuring their departments? How do you go about it at BookMyShow at scale?
So overall, at a brand level, I think our TAMA is quite high, right? So top of mind recaller. So there's not much that goes into brand building as such.
Hmm.
What we have focused, I think, as a organization, we are very much a performance focused org, right?
Hmm.
Uh, so any spend that goes out of from our pockets has to lead into some sort of conversion at some point. It could be either today or it could be delayed, let's say in the next 2 months, 3 months, stuff like that. So our focus is more on ensuring that you get most returns of your dollar that you spend out. So performance marketing is a big chunk when it comes to our media spends. Uh, we do spend a limited amount uh, in rewards from time to time to the user. Again, going back to the retention side of things. Uh, but within performance, we've stopped, or I would say rather, at least from a movie's perspective, we've started exploring uh, analog mediums like your, outdoor or radio for that matter, right? Because we feel our audience is now available online, uh, easier to target, easier to reach out to them. You get better clarity of your conversions, and you're talking to them probably at the right time in the right moment,
Hmm.
and not like placing one hoarding in one building and hoping that somebody would see it and probably end up transacting. So I think that is what has worked for us really well in the last 4 or 5 years. Even if I take a year prior to COVID and post COVID, uh, this reduction in offline media spends has helped us at least mathematically give us better ROI than what it used to earlier. So I think from a movie's perspective, we'll probably stick to that. We are not saying that it will be completely out of the picture.
Hmm.
It's just that wherever our focus is correctly, outdoor or radio as a medium doesn't make sense for us. Maybe let's say a year down the line, if the goal suddenly is up to target 20 really smaller cities where probably the digital penetration might be less, or people are still exploring radio and TV and
Mhm.
stuff like that. Maybe will be there at that point of time. But as of now, our media mix is largely digital led. Uh, so it's either uh, Meta, Google, or one of the media buying that we might do here and there. However, when it comes to events, that's a different ball game altogether. There we do a decent amount of offline media as well, but a large part of that is led by partnerships, uh, and in some sort of barter uh, association that the team does. Uh, but yeah, that is one area where we do explore offline mediums because uh, for such events, maybe it makes more sense. While we are not saying that we don't do digital at all for them, it's a healthy mix of digital. Plus, you also the good part is that you're sitting on a very huge database of
Mm.
users.
Yeah.
Uh, and talking directly to them, it's like any other offline company's dream, right? Today, if I have a base of, let's say, 40, 50, 60 million people, why would I want to explore somebody else's media to try conversions? I have my own media. Why not maximize that? So I think some part of that, some part of digital platforms, and a very small portion of offline medium does the job for us.
Got it. Got it. On
Yeah,
performance marketing, since you are heavily focused on that, right?
yeah,
I've had conversations with clients, where I've had them say ki, I don't care about the creative. Data and CTRs and all should be good. I don't really
yeah,
care about
yeah,
creative and
yeah,
all. And I often see a lot of creative people being a little bit pissed with that. They're like,
yeah,
creativity in advertising is dying.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
at the same time, I see content creators like Gary Vee say that the differentiator is creative.
yeah.
If you want, optimized ad spends and good click through rates, it's the creativity of your ad which actually gets more taps. So, there are so many opinions flying around. I wanted to ask you, what's your take here?
So I think if see again for us, uh, since we our campaigns are running like almost 365 days a year, right?
Mm.
And probably the first 2 weeks I'm talking about one movie, the next week I'll be talking about a different movie, different market, different segments, and it's all spread out. So while at some point, especially for not so bigger titles, or titles where you don't have much control over the creative, right? Because the IP is owned by the producer. Whatever they'll give us will, in a way, maximize
Right.
it creatively. So wherever we don't have that freedom, you will see probably a plain Jane creative in our sense. Uh, However, when you see when you have studios like a Disney or a Warner or Dharma or people like that, right, or the bigger ones, who would want to create a great campaign with you collectively and not have things running in silos. That's where uh, uh, our creative juices also keep flowing, theirs also keep flowing, and it collectively delivers a great campaign. So I'll give you two examples, and one that we are running right now as we speak. This is something when we are doing with Deadpool, where if the goal is to drive advance bookings for the movie, right? It's the biggest Marvel movie of the year for this year, and it's coming after, I would say, last 2, 3 not so big Marvel movies. When you have to put in comparison to the kind of levels that Avengers has gone to, the last 2, 3 years have been not so great for
Correct.
Disney and Marvel together, right? So this is, you could say, in a way, is a comeback vehicle. It's a great franchise. You're bringing Wolverine back into it. So a lot of things are riding on it. Uh, so we wanted to maximize the advances, right? Uh, Not necessarily first day first show, लेकिन opening weekend अच्छा मिल गया तो great है.
Hmm.
What we said कि चलो user को gratify करता है, ठीक है? क्या करेंगे gratify? तो the default is या merch दे देता है, merch पड़े merch देता है. So इसे लेकिन merch जाएगा तो 20, 30, 40, 50 people back will get it, and that's about it. And
Right.
एक बार उनके पास पहुंच गया, there's nothing. There's no way to know if they liked it, didn't like it, fit हुआ नहीं हुआ, what are they doing with it? Nobody has any clue, right? So we thought what can we do more creatively? And again, this is within the caveats of there's a global team which is in a way, calling the shots on what and how the creator should look. Uh, so we gave them an idea where we said, you know what, at random, let's send a video to, like a letter sort of thing to the people. One could say it's coming from Deadpool and in his own language, and the way he talks in the movie.
Right.
A very fun way, right? So he would say, thanks for, booking the movie tickets, and, we hope you have a great experience, and but in a very, very fun way. And the other one's from Wolverine. Wolverine is saying like a professor, like a stunt professor. So his voice is what do you say? The tonality is very different than Deadpool's, right? So we created those two different variations, and then Disney says, "नहीं नहीं, सिर्फ Wolverine को बाजू में रखो, आप Deadpool focus करो." So we did that, and we created three versions of Deadpool. And what we did is we engaged with a company called Whitler. What we're doing is helping us in uh, creating variations of that creative almost on a real-time basis.
Mhm.
Uh, uh, so it's like Kavan is getting a letter in a video form which says, "Hey Kavan," and then there's a copy, uh,
Mhm.
which is copy one, and then Chirag is getting, "Hey Chirag," and copy two. So those sort
Mhm.
of randomization things are happening, and when you have this freedom to do such things, that's where I think great campaigns come in. Uh, and especially when you don't own the media. I think with
Right.
I'm not sure about your other clients or other folks out there. If you're the IP owners, uh, there's a much larger room to play with as compared to when you're relying on else's IP. And our business, the way it is, there are very few IPs that we'll end up owning, right?
Right.
Where we'll end up creating something from scratch. Uh, so yeah, we have to live with the limitations of the studios or our
Mhm.
partners. But at the same time, uh, great partners do end up giving out better work as well. So so I would say I don't think so. I think at some point why somebody would say creative doesn't matter and it's a CTR. I think the understanding that the CTR is based on a certain creative, right? The way the creative is looking, the way that copies come out, the way that GIF or that visual or the video, whatever you're running, has come out.
Mhm.
Somebody is not going to click just because I'm a brand, right? कल
Right.
उठ के मैं सब जगह बुक माई शो लिख दूंगा, कोई क्लिक नहीं करेगा. But if I say बुक माई शो पे जाके डेडपुल देखो, it's the pool of that Deadpool that is going to bring me here, right? Or
Right.
tomorrow, if you take any shampoo brand, for example, uh, if they run saying because I'm one of the leading, FMCG company in India, I wouldn't buy it because of that. I would buy it because the features of that product, and that is the copy will say that my shampoo helps in dandruff, it helps in lesser hair breakage, it helps in keeping it oil free, whatever it does.
Mhm.
Without those features, I'm not going to buy that brand. I'm not going to buy that product. So, so it's very, I would say, lame to say uh, that creative doesn't matter, and it's the CTR that the CTRs are driven by the creative and not the other way around.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Got it. No, I think loved the example and loved what you folks did there. When it comes to ideating and creating like this content, people do it in house, people outsource it to agencies.
Yeah.
What's your creative production stack?
Ah, so I think we stopped using agencies, at least a retail agency, I would say, back in 2019 or early
Okay.
2020. The idea was to create a, a, a decent in-house stack, and then COVID hit. So we couldn't sustain it for long. Uh, uh, but I think over the years we've got decent talent to get some, I would say, let's say 30-40% of the good output that you'd want. Uh, and the remaining you try and work on project basis with other partners out there. So, and then you
So it's
choose
a
and pick and
hybrid
choose.
of
It's a
in-house.
hybrid. Yeah, it's very much hybrid. But
So
there's no
how
retainer
do you
that comes
decide
in.
how do you decide like what to do in house and what should be outsourced?
So that depends on the event and the kind of uh, partnership that we are working on. So some of the IPs that we own or are co-producing it here in India would require additional helping hand
Mm.
uh, beyond the current strength, right? Some of the BAU work that we do is managed in-house. So wherever we need some additional, sets of the brains, and bring in more creativity is when we go outside. And wherever we feel the team is too thin and stretched to deliver something of this scale is when we would go outside. So and also you won't have all the let's say the creative stack in house, right? For example,
Mm.
I wouldn't have an animator in house. I wouldn't have
Right.
let's say super level 10 copywriter. I would have maybe a 5 6 7, right? But a level 10 copywriter which probably would be sitting in some agency or doing some freelance work, uh, that might not be there with us. And sometimes you would want that to come in and take this 5 6 7 to a 9 and 10 there. So I think in such scenarios is where we would go out and talk to people. Uh, it could be either on a project basis or it could be like just like the long term, like a 3 6 month sort of thing. But it varies a lot. But hybrid is what I would put it.
So like efficiency is usually like in-house, BAU speed all comes there. And I think where you need a domain expert, where you want to kind of have, more capabilities and more bandwidth added, I think that's where
Yeah,
you do like a project based thing. So a lot of people who listen to this, we are a network of creative teams, agencies,
yeah,
and individual consultants. A lot of them tune into this podcast, and I'm sure they're
yeah.
all wondering, for Chirag, like what's a great agency versus a good agency? Do you have any advice for agency founders?
Ah, not really. I mean, my exposure to them is again, I don't come from a creative field. Uh, uh, but I mean, one thing that personally I would want from an agency is to be humble of amongst all the things. You could have done some of the greatest work out there, but let's say you're not humble. And the same holds true for us as a client, right? You could be paying lakhs of rupees or crores of rupees to this agency. Uh, but let's say both the parties are not humble to each other. That relationship is not going to survive for long. Uh, it's it's probably going to die off sooner than later. And you wouldn't want that, right? It's okay to work for a lesser period of time together, but do great work, do work that is respectful and brings out the right output. But if it is not, then whatever monies they are earning, whatever monies that we are spending is for nothing. At the end of it, if either of us is not happy with how the journey has been, uh, you wouldn't want to recreate that journey again,
Mhm.
together. And which I feel, uh, and this is after coming up with some really great, content. Uh, if you want to restart that piece, uh, we can't do it, right? I'll give you a very raw examples out there in the video. If you see Dabang 1, which is directed by Anurag's brother, Abhishek, and great content, never seen avatars. Uh, but the moment the second part came in, where I think they changed the director, it was like, ha, chalo, okay. The third part came in where his brother's directing the movie. It's not so great, right? The third part didn't perform. Uh, and only reason they replaced the director is probably they didn't have a great relationship after the movie. He had few things to say about the brothers, they had few things to say about him, and eventually you lost out on two good movies that you could have made with them. So I would say uh, it's important to respect your counterparts, but also not to that level where somebody's taking you for a ride. So I think balancing things out is how I would see it.
So well put. I know. I think I don't see brands speaking on this, where from both ways, like be humble, be open to feedback. You may have done this domain with a 10 times bigger
Yeah,
company, where I may have worked with a 10 times bigger agency. It doesn't really matter at the end of the day who's getting the job done. Are we really solving the problem? is
yeah,
is
yeah.
fundamental. We are, almost at time, Chirag. So I'm gonna hop on to the last questions I have for you.
Sure.
So, I mean, AI is something which has been spoken about all the time.
Yeah.
I wanted to know again your perspective is how will AI. Firstly, how do you currently use AI as a marketer at
Yeah.
BookMyShow? And the second thing is, how do you think AI is going to influence again media generally? I'm seeing influencers now created through AI who are
Yeah.
doing brand collaborations and selling things. Literally, a studio is making them. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, I'm sure you're so passionate about media and movies. You may have a take there. So, if you could unpack these two.
Personally, I'm still exploring AI, right? So uh, even I'm trying to wrap my mind around what exactly am I going to get out of this, right? Today, if I have to spend, let's say, even in 15, 20 minutes using ChatGPT, I would want to know, uh, is it bringing any value? So my experience so far, maybe I'm not, giving the right prompts. That's what all these YouTube creators keep on saying. That that AI will only work for you if you give them the right prompts. The boss, वो तो मैं अपने दिमाग को भी दूंगा तो फिर भी they'll probably come out with better ideas, right? Or I can do a better Google search out there with the right prompts and it will give me the results.
Right.
So if my job is not to bring out outputs, if it is more strategy and more driving the business together, maybe not AI is my thing, right?
Hmm.
Uh, uh, because one, it will not understand the intricacies of your business. It will not understand what exactly are you looking at. It will not, and you cannot feed so much things into, right? अगर आप उतना ही उसको बताना है तो आप खुद को ही बता के you can probably brainstorm it within your teams and come out with better ideas. So I would say it's still very nascent when it comes to uh, uh, driving strategy because the answers, if you see, uh, is nothing different than doing a simple Google search with the same sort of prompts and questions,
Right.
and it will probably bring out one article which somebody has written in some website. Probably it's just copy pasting it from there and saying it's AI. So maybe it will save my time in terms of going to 10 different pages and bringing that summary together in one place. Maybe, yeah, that might help. But beyond that, I don't think so. It will do a great job. I mean, or rather, it's not capable to do that great job right now.
Hmm.
It's still learning, it's still evolving. Uh, uh, so we'll have to see how it goes, right? And I have to also spend time to, make sense of the entire thing. Uh, which unfortunately I have not been able to. Uh, Coming to your second question on people creating AI bots, I think a lot of companies have already done this before AI was there. I remember there was this one website that was created long back, I think almost 8, 10 years back, and so it's supposed to be a talking person, almost mimicking. So it's like a robot, but like a talking person. You could ask questions and she'll respond back. Uh, and I think it died with time.
Hmm.
What will happen with creators that see, uh, I don't know which creators you follow, but let's say, for example, if you follow Viraj Ghelani, this example,
Hmm.
right? If you're following him, you follow him for his traits, right? You follow him for the kind of content that he's creating, and once in a while, he will, very silently given that uh, ad placement somewhere in his content
Right.
that I'm having is like him talking with his mother, nani, dadi, and then बीच में बोला अरे हमको ये ले लेना चाहिए था नहीं तो हमारा ये तो ये आज
Right.
ये problem नहीं होता, right? So he's doing that subtly. Now imagine an AI bot doing that same thing. Will he have, even if the voice modulation is there, even if those three characters are there, will it d- come out as as simple as what Viraj himself would be doing? My answer would be no, right?
Hmm.
Otherwise, it's like you are, imagine running a live action movie. Like you take the last Lion King released in 2019. It is nothing but, creating a live action movie out there. If today Viraj can be impersonated by an AI, uh, it's just basically taking his face, mimicking his voice, and throwing out some content. and then selling it. So I don't think so it will replace the main creators, or and folks will also might not go there. Or rather, it could happen that again the hybrid can happen where people
Mm.
suddenly start developing a liking for such bots that उन्हें ये bot भी इसको भी follow कर सकते हैं,
Right.
irrespective of whether they are just selling it for the sake of selling or they are doing something else. Even that is possible. But completely, taking over the creator space, I don't think so that will happen. I don't think so. I think somewhere or the other, people would want that human connection to be there in whatever form it is out there, right? So, will only time will tell how this goes. Uh, Maybe we'll get to the zone of that Wall-E movie if you remember.
Yes.
I don't know if you've
Yeah.
seen it, where you just wearing those glasses and uh, drinking and eating junk food. Either we'll get into that area in another 20, 30 years, or we will realize that AI is nothing and we might just shut it down. So it could go either of the ways. But I think most likely it will be hybrid piece. Yes, you have to make better use of it, but what is better? Nobody's defining better.
Mm.
In today's time, the problem is that everybody's saying give great prompts, learn how to prompt, and the AI will do the job for you. Problem is nobody's talking. सब लोग बोले मेरा course ले लो, I'll show you how to do, proper prompts. फिर बोलेंगे अब ये buy कर लो. People are going to spend for that, right? If the tool on its own, it's like somebody showing you, how to do a Google search,
Yeah.
or how to, put a post on Facebook, or how to, put a story on Instagram. If people have to start spending for this, I don't think you'll have enough takers for this technology to survive as well. So I think somewhere the technology will have to evolve for somebody has to make it as seamless as what smartphones are for us today, right? So if like you take the earlier mobile phones, right, when the callings were almost 100 rupees a minute back
Yeah.
then, people used to give missed calls on public phones and get a call back. I think we are at that stage at the moment.
Mm.
For us to reach where we've reached with smartphones,
Mm.
uh, uh, it's going to take few years. It's going to take few years for the AI to evolve as well. On its current form, it cannot be used at a master level, right? And if it is only for the select few, then probably it's not doing its job, right? You
Right.
would want somebody sitting in Raipur and Bhilai, or in some remote village trying to do something like how they're trying to do with Facebook, right?
Mm-hmm.
Today in the last few years, you would want somebody to do that for AI to make sense and
Mm-hmm.
for this entire ecosystem to grow. Otherwise, the initial few days you'll tinker around with, you might get some output out of it, you might make some sense out of it, but you will eventually move back to your original ways because it is not delivering at scale and at the
Mm.
cost that you want to, right? So today, the day it actually gives you an output of an actual designer, for example, and with great content coming out of it, great creator coming out of it, uh, at a cost which is at par or lesser than what you're spending on that human resource, it cannot replace it. Because if I can, अगर मेरा काम ही उतना नहीं है तो मैं I might as well pay the guy and get
Right.
done with it. At least उसको चार चीज में सामने से और बोल दूंगा और समझ भी लेगा, अपना दिमाग भी लगाएगा,
Right.
जो अभी उनका नहीं है उतना, right? So
Right.
I think that's where we'll have to see. It will evolve for sure. Will it replace? I would say the answer is no. It will only complement the current ecosystem, like how smartphones have done. Yes, it will make some of the tools redundant, right? So we no longer use a physical calculators with us. We no longer use a physical diary for taking notes or for remembering phone numbers, right? So all those things will uh, become redundant, that sort of stuff. But will it completely uh, take ourselves away from it? The answer is no. I think yes, people will have to evolve, uh, but it is going to take time. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen in the next 6 months as well. So there's enough time for people to start getting on this, uh, and hopefully I also find time to get onto it.
I think towards the end is the most important thing, right? Where it's too early, we don't know what's gonna happen, and
Yeah,
most guesses in these scenarios just happen to be wrong. If you rewind and you tell somebody 3 years ago that the first thing which is going to actually seem like a proper use case is going to be creativity at
yeah,
scale,
yeah,
they laugh you off saying, no, no, वो तो end में होगा. पहले probably
huh,
we'll get machines who are lifting, all the machinery in
yeah,
factories,
yeah,
and
yeah,
turns out it's very hard for a robot to hold a object and take it from here to here versus having them write out a script. It may not be
yeah,
good,
yeah,
but they've been able to do that. So I think be curious and get your hands dirty. That's the
yeah,
best way
yeah.
for you to kind of prepare for what's next. um Chirag, last question for you now.
Sure.
um you know I believe you mentioned that learning's an extremely important thing for you,
Yeah.
and growing, within Book My Show personally yourself, that's played an important role. And while we did not know if the both of us were on the same batch at GrowthX as well, and
Yes.
it was
Yes.
it's so nice to see that after having so much experience, you're still enrolled into learning more and more aspects. So
Yeah.
as the last question, I guess, for everybody who's tuned in so far, um, what's your take on upskilling? How much time should one make for it, and what are some tips you have to learn the right things very quickly?
Ah, so I think somebody for our generation, the way technology is growing, uh, we have to dedicate at least 10 to 15% of your weekly time or a monthly time, whatever that you can gather in upskilling. And understanding the right areas of upskilling is also important. So don't go, it's like, college के टाइप पे होता था, everybody's taking engineering, we should also take engineering. Everybody's taking a bit of medicine, we should also do that. कोई ये कर रहा है तो हम ये कर लेते हैं, ये कर रहे हैं, ये कर लेते हैं. It's important to understand your niche. It's important to understand, and I think there's one learning that not that I'm able to apply so much to myself. I mean, one thing in GrowthX when we were there, I think either API used to keep on saying that, be a T-shaped marketer. So it's important to understand what is your T, right? And you try to be there. It doesn't, I mean, personally, I think it's not necessarily uh, that you have to be a T-shaped marketer, but try to be as close to that T as possible, or learn your ways around that T. So because the tea in which you started with might not be relevant in few years, because the bar has moved to a different level. So if somebody was a t-shirt marketed in offline media, let's say 5 years back, uh, that is not relevant in this after 5 years. Now digital is more the space you want to be in. Uh, so understand what your personal goals are, understand what is it going to take for you to get there, and also understand which skills are going to help you to go there. Right? On your own, you won't be able to go there. So you will have to learn some skills as you go along. Some would be paid for, some would be available for free, some would require certification, some might not require anything. It all depends on the other personality, where either if you're an entrepreneur, then you don't have to prove anything to anyone. You just learn those skills and start applying to your business, and then get results out of it. If you're working in a company, uh, it depends if your company sees the basic learning that you've done, without certifications. If it is helping the company's goals, it will reward you for that, right? Even without those certifications. Uh, but let's say if there are companies who will say, अरे नहीं नहीं certification MBA नहीं है तो आपको ये role नहीं मिलेगा करके, right? या आपके पास ये नहीं है तो ये नहीं मिलेगा. So in such scenario, you can't do anything. So
Hmm.
if you feel that you are in an industry, or you are in an area of a career where certifications are very important, then go for it. Apply for the certification, get those certifications, and I think that should help you excel, sustain much longer in your career, uh, uh, and it also gives you, uh, one additional learning, life lessons also, included in that, right? Uh,
Mhm.
you learn many things apart from that certification. So if you're like I've joined this one course recently, uh, uh, like it's still the third week, and I'm meeting people who are 21 years old. I'm meeting somebody, I think most of folks are younger than me, right? So their perspectives on certain things are newer to me.
Mm-hmm.
Similarly, my experience on certain areas helps them the other way around, right? Uh, and together, that's a win-win for both of us. And I think that's what works in the longer run. I mean, 5 years back when I was, I mean, when I would be talking to my boss back then, he would have a certain perspective from his experience, and I would have a certain perspective basis what I'm seeing around me. And together, you try and join the two dots and try and see if some campaign can be done around that. And then you try, you either fail or it succeeds, you scale it up. It fails, you have your learnings, and you don't go further on that path. So uh, I think it's the basic thought is that when you're upscaling, try and do it in a slightly group environment, so that you learn from each other.
Yeah.
If nothing else, right? You might not end up completing that certification, for example, uh, uh, but at least you'll have some perspective that will help you, if not now, maybe 5 years later. Uh, so yeah, keep on upskilling, uh, but understand the right upskilling. ठीक है, don't do सब लोग ये कर रहे हैं, सब सब एआई सीख रहे हैं, मेरे को एआई सीखना है, वो मत करो. Understand the use case, understand it. एआई में भी क्या करना है. AI has multiple use cases, right? It has use cases for data teams, it has use cases for marketers, it has use case for business managers. Understand the one that works for you and go on that path. And not just because everybody is doing data science, मेरे को भी data science करना है. So that shouldn't be the case, is what I would say.
Awesome. I think you touched so many important things about learning. So thanks a lot for that. And this is the end of our time, Chirag. Thank you so much for giving me almost over an hour on on a Tuesday. Really appreciate that. I hope you enjoyed.
I loved it. It was a great experience. It was the first for me. So I would wait to see how it comes out at the end.
Awesome. Honored that I was one of the first people to be able to get this opportunity,
Yeah.
and for everybody who's stuck along till now, thank you so much for tuning in. If you'd like to hear another marketing leader like Chirag, please like, share, and subscribe. We'll have another episode coming out very very soon.